A piercing scream echoed through the dimly lit apartment, shattering the silence of midnight. Emily said, "No, don't you dare walk away like this." She clutched 7-year-old Noah tightly, her trembling arms holding him as though he was her lifeline. The sharp slam of the door followed Daniel's furious retreat, his face still twisted with rage in her mind's eye. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, their cries blending with the pounding of her heart. Emily's breath hitched, her world tilting as betrayal sliced deeper than words ever could. She whispered to herself, "After everything I sacrificed, how could he betray us like this?" Noah whimpered softly, pressing his tear-streaked face into her chest, unaware of the storm unraveling around him. Emily's mind spun with memories of nights spent working overtime, the quiet dinners alone, and every choice she had made for Noah's future. Yet in this single moment, the life she thought she had held together had fractured. The walls felt closer, the air heavier, the silence unbearable after the echoes of his anger. She could not escape the truth. Everything had changed, and the battle for her son's safety had just begun. Her resolve trembled, but her love anchored her. Emily said, "I will protect you, Noah, no matter what it costs me." The silence after the storm was unbearable, every second weighed down with the echo of betrayal. Emily whispered, "It's just us now, Noah. We'll be okay." Her heart knew the lie, but her arms held truth as she rocked him gently. The small apartment seemed too vast, filled with shadows of what had just unraveled. Noah's sniffles softened into heavy breaths, exhaustion pulling him into a fragile sleep. Emily's eyes stayed fixed on the door, each creak of the building making her flinch, fearing Daniel's return. She muttered, "I will never let him tear us apart again." The sirens faded, but the dread lingered, coiling around her chest like a serpent. She thought of the years spent enduring, the sacrifices that brought her here. But tonight, she realized survival would no longer be enough. As the apartment settled into uneasy quiet, Emily's mind wandered to sacrifices etched deep into her bones. She remembered late-night scrubbing tables, mornings spent packing Noah's lunch, and every moment she gave up her own dreams. Emily said, "Every tear I shed, every hour I worked was for you, Noah." She brushed his hair back gently, staring at his peaceful face. Guilt and strength coexisted in her chest, warring like shadows. She thought of friends who had left, promises broken, and nights when hope barely lit the dark. Now, betrayal had crashed in like a storm, and she stood on unsteady ground. The memory of Daniel's words seared her thoughts. His sneer, his cold declaration, "You'll never manage without me," echoed. Emily clenched her jaw, her heart burning with both pain and fury. She whispered, "You left us once, Daniel, and I survived. I will again." The betrayal felt sharper because she once trusted him. Love turned to weapon, and trust shattered into shards that cut with every recall. Her hand tightened around Noah's small shoulder, as if to shield him from memories too cruel. The shadows of the past pressed in, but she refused to break. The knock on the door jolted her, heart hammering as if Daniel had returned. Emily whispered, "Noah, stay close." But it was only silence beyond the wood. Fear mingled with defiance as she pressed her palm against the lock. She felt the threat of custody, the storm of legal battles waiting ahead. She said, "He will fight dirty, but I'll fight harder." The night stretched endlessly, each second daring her to give up. But Emily's soul, battered yet burning, anchored to the promise of protecting Noah. She breathed deeply, readying for the war she never chose, but would never surrender. Morning light crept through the blinds, but Emily's heart still felt heavy. She poured coffee with trembling hands, trying to steady herself. Her best friend Claire leaned against the counter, eyes full of concern. Claire said, "You look like you haven't slept at all." Emily forced a small smile and whispered, "I can't close my eyes without hearing that door slam." Claire reached out, squeezing her hand firmly. Claire said, "You are stronger than this storm. You've held yourself up for years." Tears welled in Emily's eyes, but she shook her head. Emily said, "I feel like the ground is disappearing under me." Claire's voice softened. Claire said, Then let me be the ground when you can't stand. Silence hung between them, but it was a silence filled with comfort. Emily's thoughts flickered back to Noah still asleep in the bedroom. "Oh," she whispered, "he can't see me break. I need to stay whole for him." Claire nodded slowly, her eyes glimmering with unshed tears. Claire said, "You won't face this alone, Emily. Not while I'm here." In that fragile moment, Emily felt the faint spark of hope return. Later that afternoon, Emily met her old friend Mark at the cafe across the street. The air smelled of roasted beans, but trust felt bitter. Mark, once her confidant, shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. Emily asked, "Why didn't you tell me what you knew?" His jaw clenched, eyes darting away. Mark said, "It wasn't my place. I didn't want to be caught in the middle." Emily's voice trembled with restrained anger. Emily said, "Your silence put me in danger, Mark." The words hung heavy as he fumbled with his cup. Mark muttered, "I thought I was protecting you." She leaned closer, fire in her eyes. Emily said, "Lies don't protect, they destroy." The cafe noise blurred into a dull hum as the wound of betrayal deepened. Mark lowered his head, shame spilling into his expression. The friendship that once held her through storms now felt like another fragile thread breaking. Emily whispered, "I trusted you." The distance between them felt greater than the table they sat across. That night, Noah sat cross-legged on the floor, crayons scattered across the rug. Emily watched him draw a picture of a house with two figures holding hands. Her chest ached as he whispered, "Mom, is Dad coming back?" She swallowed hard, her throat dry. Emily said, "Noah, things are changing, but I promise you I'll always be here." His little hand paused mid-crayon stroke. Noah asked, "Do you get scared too?" Tears stung her eyes, but she smiled softly. Emily said, "Yes, but I'm strong because of you." His innocent eyes carried more wisdom than any child should bear. Noah whispered, "Then I'll be strong too." Emily gathered him close, heartbreaking and mending in the same breath. Their fragile bond became her anchor, her reason to keep fighting through the storm. The next morning, Emily hurried into the office, clutching files to her chest. The tension in the air was thick, whispers trailing behind her. Her supervisor, Karen, stood near the desk, arms crossed. Karen said, "You've been distracted lately." Emily stiffened, her pulse quickening. Emily said, "I'm still delivering everything required." Karen's gaze hardened. Karen said, "Rumors say your personal life is affecting your work. That can't happen here." Heat rose in Emily's cheeks, humiliation sinking in. She clenched her jaw, forcing calm. Emily said, "My work speaks for itself." But Karen leaned closer, her tone cutting. Karen said, "Be careful, not everyone here is on your side." Emily felt the walls closing in, the battle growing on every front. Her job, once her stability, now felt like shifting sand. She walked away with her chin high, though her insides trembled. That evening, Emily sat by the window, city lights flickering outside. The world felt too loud, yet her apartment too silent. She whispered, "How much more can I take?" The weight of betrayal, custody threats and work pressure bore down like chains. Noah slept peacefully in the other room, his small breaths a lull against her storming thoughts. Emily clasped her hands tightly, trembling as memories replayed. Daniel's sneer, Mark's silence, Karen's warning. Each memory burned deeper. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, eyes closing. Emily whispered, "I can't fall apart, not now." The quiet room held her vow, fragile but fierce. She knew the coming days would demand more than she had ever given. Yet somewhere deep inside, love for Noah ignited a fire that refused to go out. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and fear. Emily sat at the plaintiff's table, her hands folded so tightly, her knuckles turned white. Daniel sat across from her, smugness carved into his expression. Daniel said, "You'll never keep him from me." Emily's voice was steady, though her insides shook. Emily said, This isn't about you, it's about Noah. The judge's gavel struck, and the room fell silent. Lawyers spoke in clipped tones, tossing words like weapons. Emily's heart hammered as every lie Daniel spewed threatened to sway the room. She stole a glance at Noah's drawing tucked inside her folder, the anchor keeping her sane. Emily thought, he's my reason. I won't let him down. Her chest tightened as Daniel smirked, enjoying her discomfort. The weight of the system pressed down, cold and unforgiving. But Emily sat straighter, eyes burning with resolve. Emily whispered to herself, no matter what it takes, I'll fight for him. That evening, Noah sat quietly at the table, poking his food without eating. Emily watched him, heart aching at his silence. Noah whispered, "Why are you and Dad fighting?" Emily's breath caught, and she forced a gentle tone. Emily said, "Because adults sometimes forget what matters most." His eyes brimmed with confusion. Noah said, "Am I the reason?" She reached across, squeezing his hand. Emily said, "Never. You are the reason I fight so hard." Tears glimmered in Noah's eyes, but he nodded bravely. Emily's soul fractured at the thought of his childhood shadowed by battles. She pulled him close, whispering promises that even she feared she couldn't keep. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, wrapping around them like the weight of truths left unspoken. The next day, Emily sat across from her lawyer, a stack of papers between them. The lawyer, Ms. Grant, tapped her pen sharply. Ms. Grant said, "The judge has doubts about your stability." Emily's pulse spiked. Emily said, "I've worked every day to provide for Noah." Ms. Grant leaned forward. Ms. Grant said, "But Daniel's lawyer paints you as unstable and overworked." Emily clenched her fists, anger rising. Emily said, "He abandoned us, and now he dares to question me." The office buzzed with distant phones, the weight of the system pressing heavily. Ms. Grant sighed, her voice softer. Ms. Grant said, "We need evidence of your strength, not just words." Emily swallowed the bitter truth, realizing this fight would demand more than resilience. It demanded proof. Claire stopped by that evening, finding Emily pacing the living room. Claire said, "You can't keep carrying this alone." Emily snapped, "I don't have a choice." Claire grabbed her shoulders firmly. Claire said, "You do. Let me help." Emily's eyes burned with unshed tears. Emily said, "I'm terrified of losing him, Claire. He's all I have." Claire's face softened, her voice steady. Claire said, "And you're all he has. Don't forget that." Emily collapsed onto the couch, the fight draining from her body. Claire sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. The silence between them was filled with both exhaustion and hope. For the first time in days, Emily leaned against someone else and let herself breathe. Bills scattered across the table like weapons waiting to strike. Emily rubbed her temples, staring at numbers that made her chest tighten. The weight of the custody case drained her finances faster than she could keep up. She whispered, "How am I supposed to fight this battle with nothing left?" The fridge hummed, a cruel reminder of how fragile stability had become. Her hands shook as she reached for the stack, imagining Daniel smirking at her struggle. The world seemed determined to push her down, yet Noah's soft laughter drifted from the other room. The sound pierced the darkness, reminding her why she fought. Emily said softly, "I'll make it work. I have to." Her fear remained, but so did her fire. Emily's world tilted again when she found the envelope hidden beneath Noah's school books. Inside were documents, private court details, that only Mark could have leaked. Her pulse roared in her ears. Emily whispered, "How could he do this to me?" Betrayal cut deeper than a blade as she remembered his evasive eyes at the cafe. Rage and sorrow battled within her chest. She confronted him in his dimly lit apartment, the smell of stale coffee hanging in the air. Emily said, "You fed him information, didn't you?" Mark's face paled, his voice faltering. Mark said, "I thought it would calm things down." Her fury flared. Emily said, "You gave Daniel weapons to destroy me." Silence weighed heavy as Mark's shame-filled eyes confirmed the truth. The bond they once shared shattered like glass on concrete. Emily turned, her heart pounding. Emily whispered, I don't forgive you. Not now, maybe not ever. The following day, Emily entered the office only to feel every gaze sharpen on her like knives. Whispers echoed as Karen approached with a file in hand. Karen said, Your absence yesterday was noticed. Emily braced herself. Emily said, I had court. It wasn't optional. Karen's eyes were cold, her lips thin. Karen said, Distractions are liabilities here. Someone is already questioning your competence. Emily's stomach dropped as realization dawned. Daniel was reaching into her work life now. Her voice trembled, but her gaze stayed firm. Emily said, My personal life doesn't erase my dedication. Karen shrugged, unimpressed. Karen said, Be careful. The walls have ears. As Karen walked away, Emily felt the foundation of her stability cracking further. It was no longer just a custody battle. It was war on all fronts. That evening, Emily returned home to find Noah quietly coloring at the table. He looked up, his innocent eyes brimming with worry. Noah whispered, Mom, why do you look sad every day now? Emily's chest tightened as she knelt beside him. Emily said, Because things are hard, but I'll always keep you safe. His small hands trembled as he held her arm. Noah said, I hear people say bad things about you at school. Pain sliced through her like ice. Emily forced a soft smile. Emily said, People don't always know the truth. But you do. You know who I am. Noah nodded slowly, his voice trembling. Noah said, I know you're the strongest person I know. Emily pulled him close, her tears falling silently into his hair. His words carried a weight no child should bear, but they stitched her fractured soul with hope. That night, Emily's dreams blurred into haunting memories. She saw her younger self in a hospital corridor, clutching Noah as an infant. Her late mother's voice echoed in fragments, words of love and warning. Emily whispered in the dream, I wish you were here, Mom. The figure of her mother appeared, calm yet sorrowful. Mother said, You carry more strength than you know, Emily. She reached out, but the image dissolved into shadows. Emily jolted awake, drenched in sweat, the room dimly lit by moonlight. The memory lingered, sharper than any dream. Her mother's absence carved wounds that had never healed. Emily said softly into the darkness, I can't keep running from the past. The memory had returned not to haunt, but to push her forward. The next morning, Emily opened the door to find a figure she never expected. Her estranged brother Michael. His eyes mirrored hers, weary yet sharp. Emily whispered, Why are you here after all these years? Michael's voice was steady but carried guilt. Michael said, Because I couldn't stay away this time. I know what you're going through. She stiffened, old wounds reopening. Emily said, You left when we needed you most. His gaze fell, shame etched across his features. Michael said, I've been watching from afar. I want to help. Suspicion gnawed at her, but so did a fragile hope. She whispered, If you're here, then prove it. His presence stirred storms of doubt and the faintest possibility of salvation. The past had walked back into her life, demanding to be faced. Emily sat across from Michael at the kitchen table, the air thick with unspoken history. Her eyes narrowed as she asked, Why should I trust you now? Michael's gaze held steady, though regret clouded his expression. Michael said, Because I've made mistakes, but I won't walk away this time. Emily clenched her fists, anger surging with old wounds. Emily said, You abandoned us when we needed you most. Michael's voice cracked, his defenses faltering. Michael said, I was drowning in my own failures. I thought leaving would spare you. Silence settled heavy, broken only by the ticking clock. Emily whispered, Noah doesn't need another ghost in his life. Michael's jaw tightened as he leaned forward. Michael said, Then let me prove I'm not one. Doubt gnawed at her, but so did the faint flicker of hope that he meant his words. Later that day, Michael revealed a folder of documents, his voice steady but shadowed. Michael said, Daniel's finances aren't clean. He's hiding assets. Emily froze, suspicion battling relief. Emily said, How did you get this? Michael's jaw tightened. Michael said, I've been keeping an eye on him, waiting for the right moment. She pressed her lips together, fear prickling. Emily said, This isn't just evidence, it's dangerous. Michael's eyes glimmered with determination. Michael said, If you use this, you can win. Her heart pounded as she imagined the courtroom, Daniel's smirk vanishing. Yet the price of accepting Michael's help loomed heavy. Emily whispered, Every secret comes with a cost. She knew nothing came free, not even salvation. Claire arrived that evening, her eyes narrowing at the sight of Michael. Claire said, What is he doing here? Emily rose quickly, tension sparking in the room. Emily said, He says he wants to help. Claire folded her arms, voice sharp. Claire said, And you believe him after all this time? Michael bristled, his tone defensive. Michael said, I'm not here for her trust. I'm here to protect Noah. Claire's glare softened only slightly as she turned back to Emily. Claire said, Be careful. Hope can blind you. Emily's chest ached at the divide between loyalty and possibility. She whispered, I can't fight every battle alone. Silence stretched, thick with distrust and fragile hope. For the first time, Emily realized her fight was no longer just hers. It was spilling into everyone around her. Emily found herself at the park the next morning, Noah running ahead with laughter ringing out. For a brief moment, the world felt lighter. A man approached, tall with kind eyes, introducing himself as David. David said, Your son has quite the energy. Emily smiled faintly, cautious but warmed. Emily said, He keeps me on my toes. They sat on a bench, conversation flowing easily. David said, It's rare to see such dedication. You've clearly sacrificed a lot for him. Emily's chest tightened, unaccustomed to kindness from a stranger. She replied softly, He's my whole world. Their eyes lingered a moment too long, an unspoken connection forming. Yet beneath it all, Emily's heart wrestled between longing for comfort and fear of distraction. That night, Emily sat at her desk, staring at the documents Michael had given her. Her reflection in the darkened window seemed like a stranger. She whispered, Every choice feels like a trap. Daniel's shadow loomed in her mind, his voice taunting her. She saw Noah's face, innocent and trusting, the reason behind every breath she took. Emily said quietly, For him, I'll risk everything. She folded the papers, determination hardening within her. Yet doubts whispered, trusting Michael, opening her heart to David, leaning on Claire. Every bond felt fragile, every decision heavy with consequence. But Emily knew one truth that anchored her soul. She could not surrender. The storm was raging, but she was done hiding. The courtroom was silent as Emily sat across from Daniel, her heart pounding like a war drum. His lawyer stood tall, voice smooth as he painted her as unstable. Daniel smirked, confident in his lies. Emily clenched her fists under the table. Emily whispered to herself, Stay strong, don't give him the satisfaction. The judge's eyes flicked between them, weighing every word. Emily rose to speak, her voice trembling at first, but gaining strength. Emily said, I've built my son's life with sacrifice and love. No amount of lies can erase that. The room buzzed with tension. Daniel rolled his eyes, muttering under his breath. Daniel said, She's desperate. That's all this is. Emily's lawyer steadied her with a nod. She inhaled deeply, ready to battle not just for custody, but for truth itself. Michael stepped into the witness stand, his presence startling Daniel. Michael said, I've seen what he hides, and I won't stay silent anymore. He produced documents, exposing Daniel's hidden accounts. Daniel's jaw tightened, panic flickering across his mask of arrogance. Emily's heart raced as hope sparked for the first time in weeks. Daniel's lawyer protested loudly, but the judge silenced him with a gavel strike. Emily looked at Michael, their eyes meeting with unspoken forgiveness. Emily whispered, maybe he really came back for me. The tide shifted, Daniel's composure cracking under the weight of truth. Emily's hands trembled, not with fear but with relief, as the walls Daniel had built around his lies began to crumble. Emily's turn came, and the lawyer's questions cut like knives. Daniel's lawyer sneered. Isn't it true you've struggled financially? Emily steadied her breath. Emily said yes, but I've never let my son go hungry. Her voice shook but grew stronger. Emily said every scar, every sacrifice is proof of my strength, not weakness. She felt the room shift, some faces softening as truth resonated. But when Daniel's lawyer pressed harder, Emily faltered, tears welling. He smirked triumphantly. Then she saw Noah's drawing peeking from her folder. Emily whispered, I won't break. She straightened, her tears transforming into fire. Emily said, you may question me, but no one can question my love for my son. Silence filled the air, powerful and undeniable. Daniel was called to testify, his arrogance unraveling under pressure. He raised his chin high, declaring, I deserve custody. But when pressed about the hidden accounts, his words faltered. The judge's gaze hardened and whispers spread through the gallery. Emily leaned forward, breath shallow, watching his mask slip. Daniel's temper flared, his voice rising. Daniel said, she's manipulating everyone, she's not fit to raise him. The courtroom buzzed with shock at his aggression. Emily's lawyer countered, presenting Michael's evidence again. Daniel's fists clenched on the stand, sweat beading on his forehead. His lies, once weapons, now collapsed into ashes. Emily's heart pounded with both fear and victory as she whispered, it's ending, finally ending. The climax struck as the judge called for closing statements. Emily rose, her voice steady, echoing in the chamber. Emily said, this fight has never been about winning against him. It has always been about protecting my child. She looked directly at Daniel, who glared back, defeated but still bitter. Emily continued, I've worked, I've sacrificed, I've endured every cruelty for my son. That is love. That is strength. Her words rippled through the room like fire. Daniel's lawyer faltered, his rebuttal weak, Daniel's silence deafening. The judge's expression softened, though his gavel remained poised. Emily's knees nearly buckled as she sat down, but hope surged. She whispered, for you, Noah, I will never stop fighting. The room fell silent, holding its breath for the verdict yet to come. The gavel struck, sealing the verdict. The judge's voice carried through the courtroom. Judge said, custody is awarded to Emily. A flood of relief broke through her chest, though exhaustion weighed every bone. Daniel's face hardened, his silence louder than protest. Emily gripped the table edge, tears threatening but held back by sheer will. Emily whispered, we did it, Noah. Michael placed a hand on her shoulder, pride flickering in his weary eyes. Emily's lawyer smiled faintly, nodding at her victory. But the joy felt muted, shadowed by the scars of what she endured. Her soul carried wounds that no ruling could erase. She walked out of the courtroom with her head high, not because she won, but because she survived. That evening, Emily sat alone in her apartment, the silence heavy yet strangely calm. She stared at the walls that had once echoed with fear and anger. She whispered, it's finally over. But the ache in her chest reminded her that endings weren't always clean. She thought of Daniel's betrayal, Mark's silence, Karen's warnings, and the endless nights of tears. Freedom had come at a cost, etched deep in scars. Emily said softly, I've won, but I've lost parts of myself along the way. The city hummed outside, but inside, she felt the weight of stillness. Yet within that stillness, a seed of peace began to grow. Later, Noah crawled into her lap, his small arms wrapping tightly around her. Noah whispered, Mom, does this mean we don't have to be scared anymore? Emily's tears finally fell as she kissed his hair. Emily said, yes, baby, we are safe now. His little hand rested against her heart, as if feeling its steady beat. Noah whispered, I'm glad you never gave up on me. She smiled through her tears. Emily said, You are the reason I never could. His presence was her anchor, his innocence the reminder of why she endured everything. In that quiet moment, mother and son found the strength that had carried them through. As dusk fell, Emily stood by the window, watching the world glow with evening light. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like punishment, it felt like possibility. She placed her hand on the glass, whispering to herself, I can rebuild. I will rebuild. Michael's voice echoed in her mind, offering to help. Claire's strength reminded her she wasn't alone. And David's kindness lingered like an unanswered question. But tonight wasn't about them. Tonight was about reclaiming herself. She smiled faintly, her reflection no longer a stranger, but a survivor ready to start again. The apartment was quiet, filled only with the gentle sound of Noah's breathing. Emily peeked into his room, her heart swelling as she saw him sleeping peacefully. She placed her hand on the doorframe, a silent vow lingering on her lips. Emily whispered, We'll be okay. We're stronger now. She sat beside him, brushing his hair back, as a true smile broke across her face. Not the mask she had worn for so long, but one born from strength and love. The battle had left scars, but it also carved resilience into her soul. She whispered again, this time to herself, We'll never stop fighting. The night wrapped around them, not as a threat but as a promise of a future they would face together.